Hey, how's it going, guys? It's your retro future boy Ricky Summer here, and today I've come back in time to discuss with you yet more information from the most recent MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries AMA. This video brought to you by
Inner Rim Excavations. Building the future.
Alright, so this AMA was all about the AI, which I'll be honest, doesn't really interest me a great deal. I don't really care how they make the sausage, as long as they make the sausage and it's good. But one thing I did take away that I did find interesting, or perhaps a little bit disappointing, is it's become very clear to me that MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries is not going to be a sim. Am I at all surprised? Not really. Am I upset? Yes. Am I gonna bitch and moan about it on the internet? Yes. No, because I'm not a child and it's just a video game. So yeah, look, like I said in my last video, and if you've been following the channel for a while, you'll know that I'm very much into the concept of running your own merc company in the Battletech universe, and that's not really something we've been able to do up until the most recent Battletech game by Harebrained Schemes, which is fantastic. But listen, I'll be honest, I kind of want that management attached to a first-person mech combat game instead of a tactics game. I very much like Battletech the game, but sometimes I just want to jump into the commander's seat and just be there on the ground. And it doesn't look like MechWarrior 5 is going to fully provide us with that experience. Like I said, not at all surprised. I fully expected that this would be the case. I had a hope. It was just one MechWarrior's dream that this is the kind of game we were going to get. So what's led me to this devastating truth, this conclusion that MechWarrior 5 is not going to be as sim focused as I would like? Well, they pretty much said as much. So people asking about the finer points of what the AI will and will not be able to do and how we will and will not be able to interact with them, it's caused them to say, yo dog, it's not going to be that deep, that's not the scope of the game. Let's go through some examples though, so you know what I'm talking about. So one of the questions I've got highlighted here is, what Lancemate commands will be available to us? And they just said, follow me, go to my target, attack my target, and hold fire. And they seem to imply that a fire at will command was sort of hidden behind one of those. So I think maybe if you tell them to attack the target, then they'll just continue firing at will. That was very unclear, and people didn't seem to probe further on that topic. It's not like a super deep tactics game. We're not gonna be able to set up like the massive plays and whatnot. This I expected. I didn't really expect much control over our squad mates, but you know, I'm happy with that. I'm not too mad about that. Then someone asked, can crew members be hired and fired? And this was specifically talking about crew members aboard your dropship, aboard the Leopard. So not mech warriors, we're talking about techs, doctors, whatever, whoever you may have on the dropship. Can you hire and fire them? And the answer was no. That's pretty much where I was like, okay, it's not a sim, this is not the kind of game they're making, it's not going to be too deep, and they pretty much straight up said as much in answering this question. So they pretty much said that really the only crew that exists on your dropship, aside from your actual pilots, your mech warriors that will be going out on missions with you, is the mech techs. And they said that hiring and firing individual mech techs or even groups of them, just interacting with them at all, was outside the scope of the game. Now they did say that that concept could be brought into the game in a stretch goal capacity or in a future expansion, but honestly, I really don't get the sense that it's something they want to focus on at all. Again, like, what do I know? I don't know what they're really planning, but the way that they were talking about it, it really seemed like maybe once they've done everything else they want to do, all their other stretch goals, all their other expansion ideas, maybe they'll throw in a little more management. But they did say that a management game is not what they're making. It is a mech action game that has just a little bit of merc company management in it. Alright, then we got onto the concept of the AI mech warriors, how their skills work and how they're going to level up. So someone asked, will AI teammates have a preference towards certain mech builds and playstyles? And the answer was no, there is no inherent preference. So a fresh recruit straight out of the hiring hall isn't going to have a preference for light mechs or heavy mechs.
Heavy bike, sir.
They're going to level up based on what you have them doing. So if we inject a little bit of speculation here and we try and interpret the answer that we received, I would hazard a guess it's going to work like this. You're going to get a fresh recruit. For example, you might put them into a light mech and whatever skills are associated with light mechs or that variant, those are the skills that are going to increase as your pilot runs that mech. I believe that skill increase is calculated and applied at the end of a mission. So they did give this specific example that if a MechWarrior is using SRMs frequently, that will level up and they will eventually get an SRM damage bonus. So while the MechWarriors don't have an inherent bonus or preference to anything specific, they will gain bonuses as you go along. So it seems like mid to late game, your MechWarriors very well may have specializations by default, but there's no inherent specialization system built into the game. Then we go into the topic of replayability and whether there's going to be variety of difficulty and mechs from playthrough to playthrough. And they said yes, based on the 5 different starting locations and what we learned from the last AMA, that each starting location gives you a different starting mech, which is pretty cool. So based on that and the fact that non-story missions will be, as they said, generated, which I presume means procedurally generated, which is fantastic, that there will be a decent amount of replayability. And they said that they're specifically designing the game to have a large amount of replayability. And lastly, we'll touch on enemy AI because I know some of you might be interested in it, even though it's not really something that concerns me a great deal. So someone asked about AI predictability, and the devs pretty much said that they want a balance. So units like tanks will be predictable, they're meant to be fodder, they can do damage, but they are easy to kill. Enemy mechs, on the other hand, will be more interesting to deal with, and they have a few behaviors that might surprise you, behaviors that will make them more of a threat. For example, if you're hiding behind a destructible structure, they're just going to shoot right through it and hit you. If it's something that will take too long to destroy, they'll come around and they'll try and flank you, that sort of thing. There's also the situation where you've damaged an enemy mech to the point that it's really not super effective, so it might retreat, try to regroup, try to set up an ambush with its buddies. Additionally, if you've shot all the weapons off of a mech, but it's still more or less functional, with the exception of the fact that it can't actually do any damage to you, well then they're talking about putting in a system, whether it's pilot ejecting or pilot surrendering, that will basically speed that up for you, because they recognize that trying to hunt down a fleeing mech that has no interest and in fact no ability to shoot back isn't very exciting. So at that point they're like, yeah, all right, let's just give it to you, we'll sort out something, whether it's ejecting or surrendering. So back to enemy predictability, they did say that they want a certain amount of predictability in the enemy mechs that you're going to be fighting. So there is an element of learning the behaviors and the variants of the mechs so that you know where the ammo is, where the weak points are, that sort of thing, so that you go, oh shit, it's a Raven and it's that variant of Raven, I know the ammo is in this part of the body, so I'll focus fire on that, and you know, you'll be more effective. So there does seem to be the potential for an element of player skilling up from a real world knowledge perspective. And what I mean by that is you're not doing more damage to the enemy because you've leveled up your guns with some arbitrary experience meter. You're doing more damage to the enemy because you've learnt what they're all about. You've learnt how they behave, how they've outfitted their mechs, so that you can target the right spots and you can counteract their tactics and that sort of thing. Will this ultimately end up in a stale experience where you've run through the game a couple times and you know exactly what an enemy's going to do? That's hard to say. We'll need to get our hands on the game to know fully. But you know, I'm not overly concerned about that particular point. But I figured some of you guys might be interested in that information, so there you go. So ultimately, what's my takeaway from this last AMA? Well, honestly, I'm starting to feel like MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries very well might be just an updated version of MechWarrior 2 Mercenaries. Is that necessarily a bad thing? From my perspective, not really, because MechWarrior 2 Mercenaries is, in my opinion, a fantastic game that holds up surprisingly well, unless you're a graphics whore, you dirty dog. I love MechWarrior 2 Mercenaries. It's the reason I got into MechWarrior and Battletech in the first place. The ability to play essentially that game again with updated AI, updated graphics, and procedural missions, which I don't think MechWarrior 2 Mercenaries had. Could MechWarrior 5 be so much more? Yeah, of course it could, but this is the first proper MechWarrior game, the first Mercenaries game we've had in so long, and if all it is just a better version of MechWarrior 2 Mercenaries? Listen, I'm not sure I can get mad at that. I'm not sure I can get mad at all. So let me know what you think in the comments, guys. Where are you on the hype meter right now for MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries? I know from the comments in my last video that quite a few of you just seem to want to jump into a mech and shoot other mechs, and that's okay, baby. That's alright with me. It seems like for the most part, that's what you're gonna get. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching. Taste the game, be excellent to each other, and I'll see you next time. Ricky Summer, out.